University. And I'm thrilled that once again we have surpassed the number 80 mark of participants who are sitting in and listening and participating in Canada, the US, Israel, and London, England. For those of you who have joined us for the first time, the format is very simple. I will introduce each guest who will then speak and or cook. We're lucky today for about 20 minutes. I will indicate to each speaker when they have a 2 to 3 minute time remaining. At that point, our National Executive Director, Ben Simon, will handle questions after both our presenters have finished. So please put in your questions during each one's presentation at the bottom of your screen. For you first-timers, just a short word about Ben-Gurion University. Although I really urge you to go to our website at www.bengurion.ca and read about why we are considered Israel's fastest growing research university in the country. We are definitely a unique research and educational institution and have been recognized for our excellence in cyber, engineering, autism, nanotechnology, and many other disciplines. We are really the new kid on the block, but we are an out-of-the-box thinking university, so please look us up and call your regional office. The Canadian Associates of Ben-Gurion University has developed a wonderful relationship with the Royal Bank of Canada. Two of their regional presidents, Martin Thibodeau in Vancouver and Nadine Renaud-Tinker in Montreal, are both active members of our regional board. It is now my pleasure to introduce Ray Warren, the Vice President of Commercial Banking on the West Coast. A dynamic leader and sportsman, he works very collaboratively with businesses in the community. We are thrilled that the Royal Bank of Canada in British Columbia is our sponsor for this week's webinar Wednesday, as we call it. Ray, the screen is yours to bring greetings.
Well, thank you very much. I am pleased to kick off today's webinar with greetings from RBC and our regional president, Martin Thibodeau. He wishes he could be here today as he has a very special connection with the Canadian Associates of the Ben-Gurion University of the Negev, but alas, he is hosting a web conference as we speak. So I am here as RBC's vice president in a major Canadian wine growing region to be with you for a minute before you proceed with your bonfires, barbecue, and Bordeaux session. This is a wonderful way in this virtual mode of connecting these days to celebrate and recognize the amazing partnership that exists between RBC and the Canadian Associates of the Ben-Gurion University of the Negev. Our 2018 investment of $2 million into the Ben-Gurion University's translation cybersecurity research is a key element of our relationship as it reflects our shared interest in a very important topic. And as we also share a deep interest in climate change, reflected in our recent launch of RBC's Tech for Nature initiative. This initiative will bring together charitable organizations and technology experts to build multi-partner coalitions to address and solve our shared environmental challenges. We'll be announcing some of those coalitions this summer. But what I can say now is that it is new ideas and technologies that are needed to focus on solutions to address climate change and sustainable food production. These are themes featured in today's webinar, especially the wine research and development being done at CABGU in the Negev Desert region. And so with that, I'll leave you with one final note. As I become aware of the viticulture research being done out of the BGU, I know that many of my clients here in the Okanagan would benefit from findings. I look to stay connected with you and wish you a great session. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much, Ray. And people, stay tuned for exciting announcements in the very near future concerning the strengthening of the relationship between Royal Bank of Canada and Canadian Associates of Ben-Gurion University. Now, would anyone really believe that outstanding quality of wine grapes could be grown in the heat and dryness of Israel's Negev desert? Certainly I wouldn't have. Well, Professor Aaron Fait has certainly accomplished that. Working in our world-famous Blaustein Institute for Desert Research, Professor Fait, who was born in Italy, has become a world expert in the field of viticulture, a new word that has now entered my vocabulary. It is the growing of grapes for wine in hot and arid conditions. After completing his bachelor's and master's degree at Tel Aviv University, he received his doctorate from the Weizmann Institute for Sciences and joined BGU in 2008 to specialize in plant physiology and microbiology. All I can say is that the wine industry has only gained since then. Professor Fait was recently featured in two outstanding articles, one in the Smithsonian Magazine and one in the New York Times, and I urge you all to look them up on Google and read them. Professor Fait, or Aaron, the mic is all yours.
Thank you very much. So nice to meet you all, even though I cannot see you. Actually, I'm not in microbiology, but biochemistry. The word-wise, they are pretty similar, but they are very different fields. So I'm working on plant biochemistry. What it means is that I'm looking at those components in the wine and in the fruit that makes you feeling good, and that makes you feel the aroma and the taste of the wine. So I'm trying to figure out what is the connection between those sensations and the environment where the grapevine grows. So I will share with you now a few slides so that we can go through a little bit of my research. That's about the environment where I work in, and it is in the southern part of the desert, actually the highlands, the Negev highlands. We have about 100 millimeters or less of rainfall a year. So it is pretty dry, as you can see. The vegetation that you see here is either in the streams of water that are dried most of the year, or they are irrigated. Now, in this environment, why actually we should grow vineyards? And is it really the grapevine, a crop sustainable in the desert? So to answer those questions, when I arrived to the Institute some 10 years ago, I started to look around, and I saw that there was some activities of small farmers mainly, starting up really like the ancient days, doing a lot of work field, extensive and really strenuous work field in the desert, to set up irrigation systems and to drill the soil to plant the vines. So I looked into the literature, and I found out that Israel is not really highly considered in respect to what concerns wine production. But this came kind of in contrast with the wine that even back then, some 10 years ago, I could taste in those really small farming realities. So we are considered in the hot area. I hope you see the mouse that is pointing at it. So we could, in principle, for the literature, grow vine for raisins, right? Or maybe for table grapes, but certainly not for high quality wine. But actually, we must know that wine grapevine is not new in this environment. It has been domesticated thousands of years ago, and winemaking techniques reached Israel 6,000 years ago. 10,000 years ago started agriculture. You were there in the field, in a region, in a quite arid region. Sometimes not really fresh water was available, and if it was available, it could be contaminated. Then a fermented solution, yes, a fermented liquid, could be the best thing you could reach out to drink safely, and was even tasty. So winemaking definitely catched up in the early years of agriculture. It then expanded in the region, and it became really part of the market, of the local market. And the Israeli kingdoms did really produce quite a lot of wine, and they exported also wine in collaboration or under the supervision also of sometimes the invaders like the Romans, using their trafficking routes, naval routes, to export the wine that has been produced. Now, this is a beautiful picture because, first of all, it is me 10 years ago. So it's always lovely to see that with my children. But what we stand in the middle of is a wine press. It is about 10 kilometers from my institute, in the middle of the Negev desert, as you can see, in a Nabatean and Byzantine village, antiquities, obviously. But look at the size. These rooms were all filled with grapevine, with fruits, yes, with berries. And they were crushed later and were collected, juice was collected into these very large buckets. Now, where they were growing the vines, actually, back then, you didn't have real roads, you didn't have netafim for drip irrigation. So the grapes were grown in the area, and just beside the village, you have these terraces. Now, were growing their grapevines in this region. And how they could grow it? Well, the Negev desert is maybe not blessed for water, but is certainly blessed by the fact that the soil can highly retain water, rainfall, or irrigation. So the Nabateans or Byzantines later were storing water and were using these terraces to stop the water runoff even from the small rainfall that they had. And the water was slowly absorbing into the soil and could keep the plant growing for part of the season. Now, remember that grapevine is not a stranger to this region and is relatively tolerant to droughts. So it was fairly easy with some cisterns and some access to water to really cultivate and have fruits produced in this region. This is another amazing picture. That's not me, but another adult man that you can see here. And you see that there are two parallel huge buckets here, and they are two, meaning they had enough fruit to fill one, and that one was not enough, so they had to use another one. So imagine how much wine was produced back then, thousands of years ago. Now, this wine was, again, used for commerce, was used in the market, in the local market, in traffic between Egypt and the Far East, the Spice Road, and the Mediterranean Basin. Now, so you see that this region is highly productive, but eventually it is called the land flowing with milk and honey. Maybe we could add wine and honey, because milk was not much of a production hit, while wine definitely was. So, but until the recent days, not major production and export in modern times happen either in Israel or in the Negev desert. And because we had a kind of a lag between the Ottoman Empire and the late 19th century, where basically no real production of wine was actually done in the region. In the late 19th century, it started again, wine production mainly from the center north of the country. But as you see in the numbers, by 1948, only 4 liters of wine were used per person in Israel per year. And that's pretty much the amount that average Italian drinks in about a week. So not much. But in these 70 years of Israel fostering agriculture and again making the desert flourishing in its production of agricultural products, we reached eventually a production of 36 millions of bottles of table wine per year. And that's really an amazing number. We are a population of about 8 millions. Part of them are Muslims, so they don't drink wine. So most of the wine is drank by Israelis, and just a little is exported for the moment. It's and also export, but definitely Israeli culture started to love wine, and especially differentiating the different products, the wine coming from abroad, coming from specific locations, and from Israel also coming from single vineyards, from a specific terroir. So people have developed in Israel a taste for wine and for good wine, and that's really advancing not only the agriculture, but also research. And this is why basically I got to it, beside loving wine myself. So where we do viticulture in the desert is called the Negev Highlands, is around Mitzpe Ramon mainly. As you see here the numbers, we have less than 100 millimeters per year precipitation, about 2,000 millimeter per year of evaporation, which is always, we are always in deficit. Is really a very dry environment. And in such an environment, we must ask ourselves what kind of terroir we have there for wine. But before that, what is a terroir? So a terroir is the set of special characteristics that include geography, geology, climate, but also it includes the wine making that eventually are translated into chemical or metabolic components that you feel on your tongue or you breathe with your nose, and you feel the aroma and taste of this wine. So the terroir is basically the connection, is the origin of your sensations in wine. Now, how does a desert terroir actually come into play in respect to wine quality? And that is really a tough question, because the desert is not exactly the environment as we have seen, so friendly to vegetation, as you can see from this amazing picture. So viticulture in Israel must, especially in the desert Negev, must be customized to the specific crop. In the field, you can have olive trees or vineyards. That's basically about it. And you need to take care of the irrigation. You need to take care of the light exposure. You need to take care of the soil characteristics. All these are challenges. We have no added water during the season, so we need to rely on irrigation. The soil is poor and even, I would say, saline. Therefore, we need to make sure that the plant gets the perfect nutrition, optimal nutrition. The light exposure is very high. High light exposure means also high incident temperature. And therefore, we need to protect our clusters, our fruits, not to degrade the amazing components that then make up a quality wine. Now, in a desert, a plant has a dilemma. So to grow, it needs to get CO2 inside. But as soon as it gets CO2 inside via the stoma, which are little pores on the leaves, immediately water goes out of the plant. And therefore, in nature, we have about two different strategies. Plants that under stress, when they feel drought, when they feel stressed, they close their stoma, so they won't actually grow, but they will keep the water balance. Other plants that instead are wishful thinker. Okay, we will continue growing, and sometimes, somehow, water will come. And these are basically the two different strategies that we have. You see, sunflower is anisohydrate, while maize is isohydrate. These are the professional names for this behavior. In grapevine, these two extremes are present. We have so much of a different variety, a genetic variety, which is then expressed in physiological variety, behavioral variety of water use, that we have vines that under an arid environment will not grow unless they have enough water. And there are vines that even if they will feel dry soil around their roots, will still growing. But in a desert environment, still growing when you have a dry pot might result eventually in death. So our first experiment, or first research project was to analyze and investigate and explore the genetic variety of very different commercial vines, commercial cultivars in the desert, how they would perform in two sides of the desert. You see them here. One was Mitzpe Ramon, the other one was R&D Ramat Negev. This was in collaboration with the R&D, with Amnon Bustan. And these two sites, they differ in altitude and they differ in 2 degrees temperature average. Why this is so important? Because everybody's talking about global warming, and we are flooded with information about what will happen if Earth will increase by about 2 degrees in the next 30, 50 years. So our one of our questions was, how will general commercial vines perform with a 2 degrees increase in their environment, in their climate? Moreover, the other objective was to see really which of these varieties could fit best in the Negev highlands. And we are now in the writing of the manuscript, and we'll share the results once the manuscript will be published. But the results are really, really fascinating, with varieties that really get stuck in their physiology, in their growth, in their sugar content in the fruits, while other varieties simply don't care about the 2 differences between 2 degrees differences between the locations. They don't care between variation between seasons. They are more resilient. They are more kind of tolerant to environmental variation. So another question that was obvious was how much to irrigate to enhance crop quality, but still remember that if we irrigate too much vines, then they start to have these huge canopies, which come
Aaron,
with a
excuse me,
Yep.
Aaron, you have 2 minutes.
No problem. So we had another experiments using different cultivars with water deficit or regulated water deficit to see how these varieties could handle an actual water deficit, how the different physiology would respond. This was also in collaboration with Italy. They have problems sometimes of drought during the summer due to climate change. And here you see our partners with the Netafim system, and we did an experiment on Merlot back in Friuli Venezia Giulia in Udine. So stress is not good for wine. Yes, no, perhaps, definitely not for all wines. And we need also to define stress. Stress is not like what they have in Italy, in northern Italy, is a very different stress than what we have in the Negev desert. Look at this amazing picture. This is a farm in Mitzpe Ramon, Nana farm. And here we explore the effect of light and incident temperature on the quality of the berries. when the sunlight hit the berry, temperature can get up to 50 degrees on the berry skin. And this can easily degrade the quality components of the berry. So we had to develop a set of experiments changing the architecture of the plant and using also plastic nets, as you see here in different colors, to try to contain the solar radiation. Still, we need radiation because it helps to develop qualities that then we appreciate in the wine, but too much radiation really can damage this quality. And therefore, we looked at how much we can keep the fruit healthy, have a more homogeneous crop with improved characteristics, without entering the results that they are published. And you can contact me, I can send you the publications, they are online as well. The only thing I would like to point out is that we managed to keep the yield without any loss, almost, under those shaded berries. And that is fantastic. So with this, I really conclude, okay? And I would like just to thank my partners of the research, and I'm open to questions.
Thank you so much, Aaron. Anyone who has questions, please write them in the Q&A box on the bottom of the screen. I must say, I could have listened to this for another 25 minutes easily. A fascinating glimpse of the history of wine growing from Bible to Corona in Israel. And I would say, using wine nomenclature, that Aaron's presentation was full-bodied with a great fragrance of desert flowers. Shawna Goodman and I met about 15 years ago and have maintained a wonderful professional and personal friendship since. Shawna, her husband Todd, and their boys moved to Israel a few years ago, and all I can say is that Israel's gain is most certainly Montreal's loss. After a stellar student career at McGill, I didn't realize about all the gold medals she won. I barely made it through and she was flying high. Shawna studied cooking and culinary education in New York City and edited the cookbook Panache, Montreal's flair for kosher cooking. Since she moved to Israel, Shawna has spearheaded a wonderful new initiative to bring sleepaway camping experience to Israeli children, especially those from needy backgrounds. Chef Shawna, which is really her email address as well, continues her love of cooking, philanthropy, and Israel by leading a live cooking class called Pantry of Opportunities. She's also the chair of the Morris and Rosalind Goodman Family Foundation. Shawna, the floor, your beautiful kitchen, and your barbecue are all yours.
Well, welcome everybody to my Israeli family, my Canadian family, and I am so touched to be included in Lag BaOmer festivities. I am nowhere near the Negev like Aaron. I am further north in a beautiful suburb called Ra'anana, which is about a half an hour from Tel Aviv. And Lag BaOmer is in the air, and you can just take a smell, a whiff, and you'll smell some charcoal. And from what I was told by my Ulpan teacher, Tzipi, make sure to shut your windows because of the dust, the extra dust, I should say, that comes in after all the barbecues that are happening. I have to say that last night I went for a walk out of my hibernation, and it was such a pleasant surprise to hear people giggling, to see families together, and to hear music, and to smell, of course, these most delicious barbecues. It will turn any vegetarian into a barbecue enthusiast. So I realize for all of you out there that it may not be barbecue season, but we're going to try to bring a little bit of Israel barbecue into your very own home with the help of my indoor grill pan and a lot of wonderful, warm, delicious spices that maybe that you did buy on your last trip to Israel and that you threw in the freezer and said one day. So this may be your day to pull out the Machane Yehuda or the Carmel Market spices that are wrapped up in 900 different bags to make sure that they wouldn't open in your suitcases. And we're going to be introducing a spice mixture called shawarma spice. And it is a mixture, so every mom has their very own mixture, but you can buy it together by Pereg, which is a brand I know that are in grocery stores in North America, or I know we're in bidud, as they say, or lockdown. You can make your own, and the different spices that are in it. And for all of you, all the recipes are provided by Ben-Gurion. I know Simon and Shimmy and Mark, they've been amazing organizing this. So just ask them, because the recipes are all there. There's nothing been left out, because nothing is worse than someone who leaves out a recipe item. So we're going to be looking at a whole array of spices. I tried to make this look like the TV show. We have paprika, coriander, cinnamon, if you like a little kick, some cayenne, ginger, cardamom, which is probably one of the more interesting spices because it comes from a pod and it's very aromatic and very good for your digestion, but it needs to be ground, which you can use your coffee grinder. Turmeric, which is what gives it the gorgeous yellow color, and cumin, which is what everybody knows as falafel tasting. So the recipe is there if you want to make your own, or you can cheat and buy a mixture like this. So what I'm going to be using today is boneless chicken, and the boneless chicken, you just want to make sure that it's all around the same thickness that so you can just ensure even cooking. But otherwise you can do this on, legs, you can do this on the breasts, you can do this on the thick, the pargiot that everybody loves here in Israel, the dark meat, the thighs, anything goes, really whatever you have. We are in survival mode and we're all about adapting. So feel free to use whatever you have. This is the easiest marinade in the world. And when you're doing cooked chicken, it doesn't really need the marinade to tenderize the meat as if you were using red meat. What you want to do is just flavor the meat. So even if you have 20 minutes, use those 20 minutes. And so that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to put my spice powder in. I'm using fresh lemons that came from, again, my ulpan, which brings wonderful people together, which is what Ben-Gurion University is really about. I know when I went on a site visit with Mark, I was struck by how much they engage with the community in Beersheba and how the campus is open and they really include everybody to come into the campus, which I think is so beautiful. And so that's what these initiative of these webinars are, to bring community together around issues that matter to us and connecting Israel and North America, which is what I'm always trying to do. So the lemons from my friend Claudia from her tree, literally what you want to do is roll them on the counter to get the juices rolling. Cut them in half. You don't need any fancy appliances here. And believe me, you don't want to wash another thing. I don't know about you, but I'm by this thing all day long. I feel like I'm putting things away and taking them out, At the end of this, I want all new pots. I just can't look at them. Here we go. We're going to put a fork into our lemon and look at all that juice that comes out. I hope you can see this is just the half of one lemon and a local lemon. And if you don't have local lemons, which I completely understand, always try to buy fresh. Don't use the bottled lemon juice because really there's a different quality in using fresh. Nothing miraculous happens unless you just don't start off with quality ingredients. The next thing we're going to be adding is garlic. And now garlic is totally in season here in Israel. And you can tell by how soft the skins are. They're not even dry and papery like you're used to. You can peel them off like it's almost part of the garlic. I'm going to put my garlic through my garlic press, which I love this toy, and always invest in good toys that you like to use, not toys that you want to, curse, because then you'll be very upset and you'll be very frustrated in the kitchen. You should be having fun in the kitchen, especially during this lockdown time when you really need to create some diversions and to create some projects for yourself. So having fun kitchen tools is a wonderful way to play, and everybody always appreciates what you make. There's no failure here, remember that. So I'm going to be adding some extra virgin olive oil, and again, quality in, quality out. If you don't have extra virgin, just use regular olive oil, or you can use canola oil, whatever you want. But again, the more fruity in it, the more flavorful it's going to be. I'm going to put a pinch of salt in and some fresh pepper. And you can see just this, less is more, right? And I think that's what this period of time is all about, is about focusing on basics and focusing on really what matters. And it's our family, it's our relationships, it's our community. It's about being grateful for what we do have and for helping people around us. So taking that time So this recipe, you don't have to be complicated to be delicious. So this is our beautiful marinade. And if you had time in the morning, you could always do that and then go to work. Or even if you got some chicken from the butcher and you wanted to be really good to yourself and organized for the week, then what you can do is marinate it, fresh meat from the butcher, and then put it in Ziploc bags. Make sure you label it, because nothing's worse than not knowing what is in the freezer. And then you have it ready for yourself, and you've really been good to yourself, because once you're making it once, make it a few times and store it properly and with proper sanitation, and you've made your life easier. And that's really little secrets. So I'm using an indoor grill pan that looks like this. It's a cast iron pan, and we're pretending like we're camping because I have my stove here, my outdoor stove, but I didn't have a cameraman here with me to go to the barbecue. But this is fun. We're adapting, we're moving together. I'm heating up the pan, and that's very important. Whenever you're barbecuing, you have to preheat your grill. You never want to put something on a cold grill, and you want to hear that, because that sort of sets the tone and it starts to smoke. And Israelis are crazy for barbecuing. It's just this whole cultural, the whole family comes around it. It's really, really dynamic. So I'm you can bring the whole family, give everybody a job. It's fun. So I'm already starting to see that it's starting to smoke a bit, which is good, and it's pre-greased. So I'm gonna take my chicken, and you hear that sizzle? Wow, that's what you wanna hear. And I'm gonna put another piece. We're not gonna have time with you right now because my pan is small to do all of them, but I certainly will do 2 of them that you can be able to see, and we'll be able to flip those together. So I'm washing my hands, which we're all very used to doing these days a lot. And as we're gonna be cooking the chicken, and I'm gonna show it to you, you know when it's ready, when it's no longer pink, and it starts to turn white, opaque, right? Nobody wants to eat pink chicken. But white chicken, the breast gets a bad rap because it dries out so quickly. So if you are making this in the morning and you want to grill it in the morning because you want it to look so nice with a grill mark, remember, you can put this in the oven at a 350 oven and bake it as well, and it'll also be delicious. But if you want to grill it in the morning and you don't want to fully cook it, just sear it on both sides, do that. And when dinner's ready, preheat your oven to warm it. So you're not cooking the chicken twice, you're searing it and then finishing the cooking in the oven. That's very important because white meat, when it doesn't have the bone, dries really quickly. Dark meat has more fat in it, so it will protect it even more. So our fat protects us, which is a good thing. We all need a little bit of smoke. So we're using some tahina. And notice that I'm shaking my tahina. Tahina is basically sesame paste. It's just made out of ground up sesames, which happens to come from Ethiopia, and they're usually roasted, and then they're grinded. And what's great about them is that they have fantastic flavor. Look at that gorgeous grill mark. Can you see? And I'm going to flip it over. See, this is multitasking. Notice that the chicken has shrunk, and I'm going to pick it up so you guys can see. Everybody see how gorgeous that is? Beautiful color. We may even have a chance to do another set. So back to the tahina, you always want to shake it. It's just ground up sesame seeds. That's all it is. It's a wonderful, wonderful pantry item to have because it's full of nutrition, it's full of calcium, and it's packed with flavor. And you can go sweet, you can go salt with it. It's so versatile. It's one of my favorite things, and it's found in every little shop anywhere here. And there's a different brand. You'll find the one you like. But always remember that you shake it beforehand because it separates like fresh peanut butter. So what you want to do is pour it into your bowl, and we're going to make a tahina sauce, okay? So you see how nice and loose it is? What happens, what's very interesting, is that when you add liquid to it, what happens is that it does the opposite of what you think. You think it's going to get more liquidy, but it doesn't. It gets thicker. It seizes up. So once you know that now, then you know, oh, Shawna told me this. Stick your fork in again. I'm putting lemon juice in. And look at all that juice. I'm capturing all the seeds because last time I did this and I didn't capture the seeds. And my son was like, what's that in my chicken? And I was like, oops, that was a pit. Oh, well, here we go. So we're going to mix that up. And you're going to see that it looks like it's getting thicker, and my hand is getting thicker. Look how thick it is. And it's the opposite. I just added liquid to it. So what do I need to do? I need to add some ice water to it. Ice water is the secret. And now I'm just going to, remember, I'm not doing this with anything fancy. I'm just doing this with my fork. And it's starting to lighten up, and it's starting to look like Israel, right? Here we go. Mixing it up, and look at that. We have gorgeous, gorgeous tuna. And I'm going to, of course, season it with a little bit of salt. And if you wanted it more harif, as they say, a little spicy, you can put some red pepper flakes in if you want. I'm going to put a little bit of cumin because I love cumin. And you know what, it's kind of thick. I'm going to thin it out again with some more water. So of course you don't need more fat in it because the sesame seeds are all full of fat. So you do not need to be adding oil to this. So here we go. It's a beautiful sauce. Everybody see how beautiful? And what I'm going to do is I have my plate. The chicken is totally ready and gorgeous. One piece. And you notice that I'm not tugging at it. And that's what you want, because if I tug at it, then you know that it's not ready to be turned. And that's a very important feature, because then you start tearing apart your meat, and that's not going to look very good. So we have time to actually do another piece, which is great together. And here we go. There we go. So you can serve this meal. I made a little bit of a salad that's over here. And, you know, a lot of variations of greens, which are good. This is like, we have romaine lettuce. I have red peppers. I have green onions. I have some toasted almonds. And you can really, the salad is the best opportunity to get rid of random stuff inside your fridge or your pantry, of course. If you have any extra chickpeas, or you have some extra quinoa, or you have some roasted cauliflower from last night, a salad is a great opportunity to play, to be experimental, and to really be resourceful of what you have in your fridge and using it up. These are challenging times and forces us to be more creative and forces us to be more resourceful. I mean, it was taking me 7 days to get a grocery order here because we were relying on delivery. So we have to work with what we got. And I have to say, I have found a lot of creativity during this time. I know from my Facebook feed and Instagram, people are cooking like crazy. And I think that there's a lot of comfort. There's a lot of creativity, as I said. And I think we're craving to nurture each other. And food is a wonderful way to do that. And even when you are alone and you like to cook, there's always nice to get something to deliver on your neighbor's door handle, a few cookies, a half a cake. It also helps with portion control, I have to admit. But I see through the bread making, whether it's sourdough or whether it's challah, everybody seems to be out there. And so I encourage you to keep cooking. I encourage you to use up beautiful spices in your cabinet now. This is the time to play. And definitely think about your next trip to Israel. I'd love to have you over here.
Chef Shawna, you know, you're under time. I have to say that, and we'll make it up with the questions, but as an amateur cook, every time I see one of your programs, you inspire me to cook more and to cook more Middle Eastern into my, put it into my mix. And for sure, you can rival any of the famous Israeli celebrity chefs. You are our own Chef Shawna from Montreal.
That's the chicken.
Okay, tremendous, loved it. Simon, I know we have quite a few questions. Can you,
Yes,
you want
we
to
do.
start we have reset?
Yeah.
What's
Yes.
the time? We have a good 10, 12 minutes for questions and answers.
Okay. For a question for Aaron from Leanne and Bruce in Toronto, what grape varieties thrive under these harsh conditions?
Yeah, well, with need irrigation and fertigation, most varieties can thrive. The issue is what varieties can give a high quality wine. Here I could include a few. Shiraz is really expressing nicely in the Negev plateau. Chenin Blanc, for instance, now, Gewurztraminer, Cabernet Sauvignon. All of these varieties are really, really expressing not only high quality, but also peculiar taste that is really related to the desert terroir.
Great. I think there's another related question from Winnipeg. So what would be the unique characteristics of Negev wines?
Well, it very much depends on the variety. For instance, I can give an example that Gewurztraminer in the Negev desert becomes softer, becomes a little sweeter with reminiscence of I would say ananas, exotic fruits. Instead, when you grow it in central Germany or southern Germany, it is a very different wine. So it very much depends on really on which variety you are using, because the issue here is the integration or the interaction between the terroir, the climate, the variety, and the viticulture practices in the field that makes up eventually your wine.
Great, thank you. A question for Shawna. How do you see food culture changing post confinement, post coronavirus epidemic?
That's a great question. First of all, I think it has ignited a whole group of people who swore they never would cook. And I think that they are building their confidence and building an interest and an excitement around food. So, you know, I think that is such a positive. I think that people are going to be much more mindful of how they're shopping, what they're choosing, how long things last, and being creative and being resourceful and mindful about waste. We're going into a difficult economic situation and people are going to have less, but with, you know, good culinary savvy and education, which is so available online, there's so many delicious ways to cook and to extend the groceries, to extend food, just by a little bit of knowledge and sharing recipes with friends and community groups. So I see a whole, you know, back to basics, back to cooking, back to the kitchen in a very, very positive way.
Great, thank you. And a question to both of you, I guess, from our friend Maxine Finkelstein in Montreal. What wine would you recommend with for Shawna's meal today? Wine with street food.
I leave this to Shawna.
Oh my God, I'm so not the expert on this. I was so looking forward. I was so looking forward. Tell me what to buy.
Remember, I'm a scientist. I'm a scientist and I'm coming from South Tyrol in Italy. So I'm not that fine with wine tastes. So go ahead.
I would say that Israel is blessed with so much abundance, so much shefa in terms of wine and assortments and boutique wineries that are so varied. And I encourage anything goes with shawarma, truly. And I encourage you to come and to decide for yourself.
Great question. Question from Montreal, Lillian Weinberg Goodman. What is the best wine coming out of the Negev, Aaron?
Well, we are in a very dynamic period. Only 10 years ago, when I just arrived in the Negev, we had mainly Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, some Shiraz here and there, mainly red varieties. And today, as you've seen also from the pictures, we have really amazing fields of vineyards. Even white varieties are coming very nicely in the desert. And at the moment, I would say that farmers are producing amazing Shiraz, amazing Chenin Blanc, Gewurztraminer, if you like a little sweet, is exotic, is also very, very fine. So I think that every year you will have for the coming years new varieties and new wine to taste. And I really suggest you to come over and do that.
A related question, are they available for export? And more specifically, would we be able to find them in Canada, do you know?
Well, they are available for export. Again, farmers, local farmers, they will have them export, and so it will be a little costly. If you have a local retailer of Israeli wines, I'm skeptic that it has such a large variety to include also, boutique wines from the Negev desert, but you can always try. If not, just contact me and I will give you some contacts.
Actually, I believe that Gad Elbaz, who's a Israeli wine importer here in Quebec, is of Isravin, is on, and he will definitely look into it. And he just sent me a smiley face. Thank you, Gad. Another question for Shawna: how has your experience of making Aliyah and integration into Israeli society been through your activism in food?
Well, I feel that I did not do this alone. I did this with my husband and my 3 boys. And coming as a family really, really helps because you have a support system, built in. And, in fact, I think my first month I got here, someone heard that I taught cooking, and I taught two 12-year-old girls how to cook. And I'm living in a very much of a community here. So word passed very quickly, and suddenly we had lots of invitations, and I started to get work. And I really believe food is a connector, and especially here in Israel, where there's no one type of Israeli food. There are so many living cuisines that are flourishing simultaneously, and which I think is what makes food so incredibly accessible here in Israel, because so many can connect to it, whether it's through their mom's kitchens, their bubby's kitchens, their savta, their, and for the villages and for the communities that have been lost, many of the foods continue to live here in Israel. And you see that just walking through the market, seeing the variety of different spices. So I think food, I have moved to many different cities in my life, and food has really been an entree, and it comes back to everybody, how good it feels to be invited to someone's house. And to me, it's the best invitation to get, because it's really an invitation to them and who they are and into their world. So that's why I love encouraging people to cook. And there's no perfection. People just want to be together. And that's what this difficult part is right now. But you can focus on getting good at your stuff right now and really nourishing your families, nourishing neighbors, pack up some of it and share it.
Can you tell us a little bit, just as a segue, about the tour, that the Israeli food tours that you've been organizing in the last few years that I've been following on Facebook?
Well, it started because I was very struck by Israel's shefa, and that means abundance in Hebrew. And I really felt that I've been very privileged to have access to my community that I live in, living in Israel at this period of time. And as a foodie, just experiencing what it means to eat locally. I never really understood that, being a Canadian and, loving the apples and loving tomatoes and loving strawberries, but I don't know how I would have survived in some of the months eating locally. So to me, that was a whole novel idea. And I really wanted to share that with, and bridge my lives together, and to share it with other women who are, out there. And I've been very blessed. We've done 3 trips. It's an 8-day journey through Israel, but I realized I didn't want to just talk about food. There were so many amazing women and men, of course, that this trip is centered around women and how they give to the country and their extraordinary ways, how they're participating in life. And so the day is Shefa is celebrating not only the food, but the music and the culture and the wine, and most importantly, the social piece, the people. And I really believe when Israelis and North Americans connect, amazing things happen. And it's shidduchim, right? We're in the business of shidduchim, and there's nothing more that I love better than participating in a call like this, where there's so many people from all over, and really blending and coming together as a big salad, as a big mixture. So thank you.
I hope you will include the Negev and the Negev wines on your next tour.
For sure.
Simon, I think we can have one last question.
There's a question, Aaron. You mentioned that you made Aliyah from Italy. What has your integration been like, and did you come to be at BGU?
Your life in 2 minutes, Aaron.
My life in 2 minutes. Oh God. Okay. So yes, it was a culture shock, but I loved it. Definitely loved it. Actually, after my postdoc in Germany, in Berlin, I came right to the desert, and that was a lovely transition. I love the desert, simply in love with this environment and this climate. So it was really natural, and feeling also like a mission with my colleagues and scientists and the farmers that are amazing and doing such a great job under difficult conditions. So simply really worth living the desert.
Wow.
Guys, I have to say that this has been not only illuminating, I mean, really from both sides, although I was much more familiar with the content of Shawna's talk than the science of Aaron's. They were also fun. It was terrific. Thank you so much, guys. And another outstanding webinar in our Webinar Wednesday series, even though today is Tuesday, but our brand is Webinar Wednesday. So many thanks to Professor Aaron and Chef Shawna, Ray and the Royal Bank of Canada, to our outstanding professional staff who, from across Canada, who work like beavers along with me, not only behind the scenes, but in helping to put this Webinar Wednesday series together, making certain all the technical glitches are taken care of behind the scenes, but especially to you, our supporters, our friends and listeners, and of course, our two outstanding participants. And we have colleagues in Israel who are feeling, colleagues at Ben-Gurion University who are feeling a little bit of their former freedom. And unfortunately, we in Montreal and Quebec are still in lockdown. The numbers are not great in Montreal and Quebec. As a matter of fact, they're the poorest in Canada. So I urge everyone to make certain that you keep physical distancing, you keep washing your hands, and don't forget those masks. Our next webinar will be in 8 days, back on Wednesday, and will feature one of the top research teams in Israel, if not the top one, led by Professor Ilan Dinstein and his team from Israel's National Autism Center, which is part of Ben-Gurion University. We have two national centers at Ben-Gurion. One is the Cybersecurity National Center, and one is the Autism Center, which says so much about our scholarship and our level of research. It is another feather in our cap, I must say. You will all receive a notice of this in your mails, along with, again, Shawna's recipes, because people, you can't imagine how many people Shawna have written. And someone asked, what is the perfect dessert? Anything with chocolate, I would say. Dark chocolate, because we have a meat meal. So you'll receive a notice of this in the mails. Have a safe week. Remember, hand washing is very important. Physical distancing and masks. And Shawna, wave your two flags again to Aaron and Shawna and Ray. Rav Todot, merci beaucoup. Thank you so much. And thank you to all our listeners and participants.
Thank you. Later.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye, Lata.